Thank you, Don. As Don said, a lot of work went into this, so before I even start the presentation, just give you an idea of how much. We met several times. We all read various research papers that have been done about pace of play. And we found out some interesting things. First thing we found out, everybody complains about pace of play, but they don't play slow. That's what the surveys actually show. Nobody will say I'm a slow player, but everybody complains about it. Well, if everybody's complaining about it, then guys, we are the slow player. When I say guys, that's a generic guys. It's guys and gals. All right? It's not about age, it's not about handicap, and it's not about sex. Guys and girls play slow and fast. 80-year-olds and 50-year-olds play slow and fast. High handicappers and low handicappers play slow and fast. So just to dispel all those myths before we even go anywhere. What's the goal of this? There's really two basic goals behind pace of play. One is obvious, to reduce the overall round time. As Don said, we'd like to see that down in 4 or sub 4 hour. All right. I know we have groups in this club that routinely play in about 3.5 for a foursome, and they don't pick up. They put it in the hole. So when someone says to me, you can't do it, I say it is doable. The other is to reduce the on-course wait time. One of the most frustrating things that I personally feel, and when I talk to people they feel, is when they see 2 or 3 groups backed up at the third hole and they can't tee off. It's about what we can do as members of the club, because we can't change the third hole, at least not yet. We can't change the 14th hole. Those are there. Short of a redesign of the course, they're going to stay there. So it's what can we do to work around those issues? So the 2 main recommendations, as Don said, was to add marshals and to educate members. We're not addressing the adding marshals. That's a Chad issue with Renee, with the golf committee, to add the marshals. Although we're going to talk about marshals in the presentation, because hopefully Chad's going to be able to bring marshals back in for the winter, for the season. Marshals and starters are there to help us. They're there to assist us in enjoying ourselves while we're out there playing. As with any employee, I'm going to emphasize this several times, they are employees. They should be treated with respect the same way they should respect us. They do not set policy. The golf committee and the master board set policy. The starters and marshals are there to help enforce policy and to educate us about policy. But they're not the ones that should be cashing because I don't like this policy. That's not their role. You don't like the policy, there are ways to raise those issues to the appropriate organizations. It's not the role of the starters and marshals to create it. Shortening around the golf. If I asked you to cut 15 minutes of your play time, you'd probably all come back and say, what are you talking about? I can't do it. That's not the kid. Now I'm going to say, can you cut 15 seconds a hole off your play time? Can you cut 5 seconds a shot out of your play time? And most people will say, yes, they can. Because when you break it down and now say, if every player can cut 15 seconds a hole, that's a minute for a foursome, that's 18 minutes off the round time. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So what is the starter's role as we see relative to pace of play? Today, what do we have? The starters go out, and the main function is to get us off the course, get out to the course on time. Police the range, things of that ilk. One of the things we're recommending is the starters are all educators. They are reminders of us to do things like follow the 90-degree rule, play ready golf, where to park the cars. And the key thing in the pace of play is after 2 warnings, the marshals and or the GPS will ask you to pick up, move forward, and catch up. Those are the 4 big things. The marshal's role, to help us keep up with the group ahead of us. Don't worry about the group behind you. I can't tell you how many times we hear there's nobody behind me. That's not your issue. Your issue is staying up with the group ahead of you. Time to introduce the flag system. Green, good place, no gap. You're in the fairway when they're on the green, you're on the tee while they're in the fairway. Yellow, the gap is starting. Red, you're behind pace, pick up and catch up. Rangers can also be very useful to us. You left the club 2 holes back, rather than you turning around, getting in the car, running back 2 holes to find your club, ask the ranger if they can pick it up for you. They're riding around the course constantly. And my usual reminder, remember they're not the ones making the rule. Keep up, catch up, pick up, what it's all about. Keeping up with the group ahead of you. How do you do it? These are some of the key things that we've come up with as a committee. I'll call it the half a dozen big ones. Drop off your car partner at their ball. Go to your ball. Don't sit there while that person's getting his club. No, let him get the club out, but while he's warming up, taking practice swings, cogitating the slight shot, finally swinging, and then he gets back in the car. Then you go to the ball. Well, then you're doing the same thing. If you just move from one to the other with the card, partner hits, you hit, you're about the same distance away. If the partner can't walk to you for some reason, they're physically handicapped, then take the car back and get them. That's a lot faster than sitting there and waiting. You can't always do that. Your ball may be 20 yards right in front of them. We understand that. But when it's possible and you're not impacting their ability to hit, take advantage of that. Read the greens and be ready to putt. You don't have to wait till your turn like the pros do. I just watched the CME tournament this weekend. They look at the green, they start reading the putt after the person ahead of them putts. We don't need to do that. When you're walking up to the green, you can already be reading the lines. Be ready to putt when it is your turn. Be ready to hit on the tee box. Again, we've all seen this. You get to the tee box and 4 people are sitting in the carts. Who's going to be the rookie that goes first? The person driving the cart is also keeping score. We ask them to keep score when they're at the next tee box. So the passenger can certainly get up and tee off if you're on the same tees. You don't have to be last every hole. Watch other players' balls, especially if you're going into the sun early in the morning. So you, instead of like 1 set of eyes, which is the person that's hitting, 2, 3 sets of eyes, they're better. Put your club back in the bag when you get to the next stop, rather than putting it in the bag, walking around the car, getting in the car. Hold on to it. When you go to pull your club out when you get to the next stop, put it back, take it, fix one out. Record scores at the next tee box. Don't sit at the green recording the 4 scores. Drive up to the tee box and record them. Some questions to ask yourself. And at one time or another, I venture to say everybody sitting in this room is guilty of some of these. That's not the point. It's to raise it to our conscious level. When you go to hit a shot, and you're walking to a ball. Let's say you're walking to the ball, it's in the rough. Or you're leaving the cart for your partner and you're walking over, or you're walking between the green and the exit stakes. Take the sand, take the club, or whatever else you may need, rather than go down and say, oh, I took a divot. All that takes time. The others are already covered. Some more. Do I have to wipe my club and put my head cover on after every shot before I even get in the cart? Well, the answer is obviously no. You can get in the cart, the towel's right above your head, you can wipe the club then. When you take the head cover off, you can throw it on the seat or in the front of the cart. All of these things, they don't take minutes, they take seconds. Big one, am I playing the appropriate tee box? When we added tee boxes was about the same time the USGA and PGA came out with the Tee It Forward program. For example, according to that program, if your average drive is about 200, according to the USGA Tee It Forward program, that means you should be playing the 4 tees, not the 3s. Your average drive should be 2 1/4 if you're playing the 3s. So we're asking everybody to think about the tee boxes they're playing. Should you be playing, gals should be playing the 5s, should be playing the 6s. Ask about it to yourselves. There's another way to determine the tee box you should be playing. If you take 142 minus the rating of those tees, and the example I'll use is the 4s, because I know what the rating is. The rating for the 4s is 116. You should therefore be a 26 or less handicap if you're playing off the 4s. If you're a 30 handicap, you should not be playing tees that are rated higher than 112. It really is that simple. It's a rule of thumb, but if you combine the two, the yardage thing and this rating, you get a good feel for the tees you should be playing. Let's say you're out on 14, for example, and you're sitting at the stakes, so you're sitting 150 yards out, and you're a better player, you know you can hit the green from that distance, and you're going to wait for it. You're going to go for it, but the group ahead of you is on the green. And there's another player that's going to lay up, and they're only 5 yards ahead of you. They should be hitting first. They don't have to wait, because if you're going to hold up and go for it, let the players that are going to lay up hit before you. Do I play a provisional ball? You know you went near the OB line. You know you went into the trees on 18, right? You don't know if you're going to be able to find it. Play a provisional ball. It's a lot faster to play a provisional than it is to get up there, search around for 3 minutes, finally give up, and then to go back and hit it again. Or alternately use the local club rule, which is drop it in the fairway where you think it was, 2-stroke penalty. One to get there and the penalty. Right? Remember, I'm not talking about the club championship. I'm talking about your casual play. All right? And I'll go further. You hit it on 7 and you're not sure it's in the water or not. play a provisional. I know you're not supposed to play provisionals for hazards, penalty areas. But do it anyway. You're playing with your friends. You're not playing in the US Open. Big one on this. Do I know the preserve areas and what they mean? Do I know where we have drop areas? The other big one is each and every one of us is responsible and shares the accountability for the pace of play of the foursome you're playing in. Whether it's in league, whether it's with your friends, whether it's with your brother-in-law, doesn't matter. We all share the responsibility for getting our foursome faster. Where are the preserve areas? Everybody's gonna say they know this. First of all, what are preserve areas? They are red stakes with the green tops, about the top 1.5 to 2 inches of painted green. What do they mean? It is a penalty area. The difference between a preserve and a regular penalty area is real simple. You're not supposed to go into it. You also get free relief for stance and swing if your ball's outside of it. So if you're on, for instance, 9 on the left side, near that little corner that shrunk in Irma, remember that one? Take advantage of that. Don't try to swing the club and it's hitting the trees. Let it go out. You can do that. Preserve areas are on 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 14. Most of us know all of them except for 14. The left side of the fairway, starting about 100 yards before the water, is all preserved. It's not just a penalty area. Drop areas is 2 on 9, on 12, the back of the green, 14 over the water, and 17 is 2. Those are the drop areas currently on the course. Whether or not they're in play for leagues is a league issue. And typically, if I'm not mistaken, Chad, none of them are in play for major tournaments. So what are the policy recommendations? Don went into this. All members will have to certify that they watch this presentation. It is being recorded. We'll see how much of an entertainer I really am. And practice it. We're hopeful that we're going to have marshals 6 days a week in season. And enforcement of pickup, catch up, pickup. Following question is, can you do this? Does anybody in this room think this is an unreasonable goal? And the bottom line is, if we all do it, we're going to walk off that course with smiles on our face. Because it won't take us 5 hours anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any suggestions on helping the committee move forward to even be better? Again, I had an opportunity by Bob Vallata to do the green, yellow, red flag at 3 men's events who were approaching 5 hours around. And when we had the flag, everyone knew who I was and what I was there for. And we averaged 4 hours. We had a gentleman that was 98 years old. His group was 1 hour and 20 minutes, 4 hours and 20 minutes, which was more than acceptable. But it can be done, and we're just trying to make sure that everyone's in agreement, because it's all the golf members that's going to make it successful. And we've had rules before, but we really didn't follow them. And now we're asking everyone to be on the same page if you want to play on the course. And once we do that, and we know the rules and what's going to happen if you don't follow them, I think we're going to police ourselves, and we won't even really need the marshals. Any questions? Yes.
Don, just a clarification, is the idea that the ranger would have a different colored flag as they approach each group then?
Yes. The flag rule is a non-confrontational system. He'll drive by, you see a green flag, he'll wave, but nothing being said. A yellow flag is the same thing. He'll wave, you got this yellow flag, you're gonna need to pick it up. And probably what I did in the men's league, if you got a red flag, I didn't ding you right away. I went around, and when I came back, I was seeing if you picked it up. Chad and the committee have adopted a new rule that was approved, that you get 2 warnings, and then you're gonna pick it up and catch it. And that's in the books right now. So, we haven't used it yet, but I think it's something that's gonna be needed to practice if we don't adopt, if the golf committee doesn't adopt our recommendations of the flag and the marshals. And you look at a marshal, I sat with Chad, he was talking about 6 days a week, maybe 6 hours, $15. You're looking at around close to 20,000 for the year, or half a cent per door. So you're talking about $20, well, probably an assessment that is going to cost a member to increase play. And I think it's more than warrants to speed up to pay $20 a door, a golf door. Yes, Mom?
I have a couple of questions. First off, why does the committee feel that a flag policy will be more effective than the GPS warnings we already have? I mean, I'm sorry, but it comes across your GPS, it has your green and your yellow and your red when you're behind pace. Now, so I'm just curious.
They never look at it.
Well, that's an issue.
I look
It's
at
an
it
issue.
every time
Yeah.
I take a shot for distance.
Yeah, but it's never, it doesn't excite anyone when they see that they're behind 17 minutes.
But, yeah.
I can say it excites me, but the people in front of you are right in front of you, and you can't go any faster.
Exactly.
What we need to do is get that group that's like 2 holes behind, moving, and that is enforcement, really.
Yeah, and that's what a marshal does. And with the flag system, that's what a flag system does. You know, he's driving around backwards, and he's seeing where the group is, and then he's gonna drive down the fairway going backwards and seeing the next group where they are in relations to the group in front of them. And that's where you're gonna get the flag difference.
But some people just put their phones away too, so they're not on all the time.
There you go.
I'm just gonna say, Pauline, when you say what's the difference between the card and the flag system?
The difference between the cart and the flag system is so many times when you're in the cart, one person sees the notice, presses the button and moves forward. The other person in the cart is not even aware that they've had it come up. Now, I get that you and me would inform the rest of the group, but I get that a lot of women in particular, maybe men as well, I don't know, aren't comfortable or don't think about it or just don't care. The flag system allows all 4 persons in the same group to be seeing the same thing. And like Don said, this is non-confrontational, non-verbal. It's not like the previous starters where, you know, they would say something to you and maybe you would not like the tone or the attitude or whatever you thought you heard. And this way it's just nothing more than a flag and everyone sees the exact same thing. There's nothing to misinterpret. It's either you're good, you're kind of good, or you better get going.
Are you gonna
Where they're, you know, if you have individuals that just don't care, that group's gonna constantly be picking up ball and moving forward. And if you know, just like my group, if I'm in a group, I'm always on them, we gotta pick it up, you know? So I know the slow people in our groups, and, we're always on them. But, you know, we're trying to, use this rule of, you know, if you're not catching up, you're gonna have to pick up. So eventually, we're probably not gonna put that person in a group. If they're always penalizing their group because they have to pick the ball up and move forward. You know, we're not trying to penalize players. We're not gonna kick them off the course. We're just gonna use that rule of, pick the ball up and move back into play. And hopefully, by learning the rules of saving a minute a hole, that's almost 20 minutes in a round. And that's a lot.
Then, on that subject, will you provide procedures as to what score someone's to record when they pick up? Many people don't know.
Yeah, double bogey. It's a double bogey net.
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I think you should provide it.
Yeah.
We're gonna have people that they're not gonna know, but if you provide them
Right.
with the information, they don't have an excuse.
That'd be a double bogey net.
Just a question about the GPS. I'm asking if there's a way to explain. Why I say that is, I've had numerous times, as an example, I'm pulling up to a park lot. I'm already looking at 3 groups, I've already got the message twice. We're already 20 minutes behind. There's nothing I can do, but, you know, maybe refine it so that you're not getting all these messages that really relate to you. And everybody's gonna get programmed, to just get that screen and keep playing.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just making that suggestion, if there's a way to do that, I don't know.
Johnny Callahan, he's a marshal over at Fiddlesticks. And the marshals come in very handy over there because they're policing the course. And they're moving people along. They know where the problems are, the bottlenecks. And they communicate with, they don't use a blacksmith, they communicate with the membership. And the membership respects the marshals and kind of police themselves and move along quicker.
It works better when there's a human person that you physically see that drives up and says, look, I know it's not you. I asked the group that's slow to start moving it up. So now you're gonna see kind of an accordion. So be aware that they're gonna be starting to move and you need to catch up with them. Then that's when the ranger also has to double back and make sure that everybody's starting to move so it doesn't, so the group just doesn't stand there and watch it go. But it works. They play it. In season, they play 3 hours and 45 minutes every day. The ladies are the fast.
Well,
Will this be based on the time of play? Will there be a time for each hole or something like that? Or is it gonna be based on a gap? Because the first couple groups aren't gonna have anybody to position themselves with because they're leading the train. So is it gonna be time, gaps, how's it gonna be determined?
well, a marshal has a time per hole is a rated time. You know, like the first hole, it could be 12 minutes to finish the first hole. So the marshal knows who's on the tee sheet, and if they reach the 6th hole, it should be hour and 15 minutes. So he would know the pace of each group by the whole number of holes they're playing. And granted, the first group off, you know, that's the rabbit. They're setting the whole pace for the whole course, you know, and they're gonna make sure they're moving quickly because the whole course is behind them, you know, so.
So as a follow-up to that question then, if you're playing at a 4-hour pace, but the group in front of you is playing really fast, and there's a gap, are you gonna be asked to move if you're playing at 4 hours?
No, again, it's a group behind you. If you're holding them up, then they're gonna be asked to pick the pace up.
Even playing at 4 hours?
Well,
That's,
I think if we get 4 hours, I think we're all on a pretty good pace. You know? Pauline?
I'm just kind of curious, we talked about 4 hours and we talked about sub 4. And I'm just kind of curious where that number came from. And the only reason I asked is that I remember having a discussion a number of years ago with Jeff Sarver about pace of play on the course and how long should it take. And I thought Jeff told on the golf committee at the time that 4 hour and whatever, 20 minutes or whatever was
15.
based upon our members' actual average pace of play. And so that's why that was established as our,
Well,
goal.
I think, again, each hole is rated for a time of completion. So if you add those all up, it comes around 4 hours and 15 minutes.
Well, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing is, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I mean, in a lot of tournament play, there may be mid-course a clock that says, if you're, you should be playing this hole 1 hour and 15 minutes into your round or whatever. So there's tools like that. And that study that the USGA and the RNA did on pace of play, the very, very first thing they said is that if you're gonna look at pace of play, and if you don't look at the gap, the time gap in between your tee times, you will never resolve pace of play. And their recommendation at the time, I do believe, was 10 minutes in between. I know we'll get fewer golfers out on the course or whatever, but
What's fiddlesticks, John?
What pace of play?
no, yeah.
8 minutes, interval.
8 minutes, and we're at 8 minutes here.
Point that I was gonna make though is, you gotta catch it early, you gotta catch them by the 4th hole, because I'll catch somebody, and I'll say, you're 2 minutes behind, you go, well, that's not bad. I said, that's a 4 hour and 15-minute round, you keep going where you are. You're only a half a hole behind, but you need to close the gap. And what also becomes very important is when you're doing a crossover, because if they don't finish, you can't start the next crossover. People have to be aware of that.
Well, and one thing that we have happening here a lot is that our starters are sending people out ahead of time. If you've got a pretty quick group or a threesome ahead of you, and they are down there on the green on one, you could be 3 minutes before your tee time for the starters and like, you're up, get out there. And that tends to cause issues once we're out on the course as well, because then when we start all playing regular pace of play, we get all that done.
The last time we went out, we were 2 minutes behind from where we would see all
There.
Yeah.
So, the starters, and Chad's in charge of the starters, they'll have these rules that they review with every group, and they're gonna make sure that they get the players off on time, Because if we can send them off too fast, we're gonna have a bottleneck on 2 and 3, and we're hurting already.
I know you answered this before, but seriously, if you have an individual who chooses not to care, how does this get resolved?
Well, if peer pressure doesn't happen, then the group's gonna be penalized and asked to be moved up.
But
Keep the pace.
But if this individual if the individual continues that habit, is there no penalty on the individual, or the group keeps on being?
The group keeps getting penalized. And then you may not want to have that guy in your group the next time. Peer pressure is going to be crucial.
Over there.
Now, I think everybody here is concerned about pace of play. That's probably why we're here, and I admire you for taking this on. I just want to know how this is going to be put in place in tournament play. Yesterday it was the seniors and Saturday and Sunday, and we were in excess of 5 hours. So how does that relate to those type of tournaments?
Well, I asked Chad if he wanted me to do the green, yellow, red flag. There is a USGA penalty for slow play during tournament. They get a warning, they get a 1-shot penalty for the group. Next time they get a 2-shot penalty, and the next time they get disqualified, leave the course.
And the reason I ask the question is there's a lot of friends that say they won't play in tournaments anymore because it's 5+ hours.
I agree. So this is something we need to address to make golf a little more enjoyable at the Legends.
I wanted to address the long round yesterday, which I did question, had the good fortune of writing with the tournament director, and was brought up to, and I asked specifically that, and I was told the reason yesterday maybe had more of a backup than normal is because they tried to squeeze in a couple extra groups for the crossover more than we would traditionally have. Now, it was a call that they made because it was whether do you send out 4 groups that go out in the afternoon with the regular members at large that are golfing, or do you keep them in the morning playing in the tournament? So yes, it did end up causing backups because of that crossover, because we were adding additional groups in there. Right or wrong, that was a decision that was made with their committee, and that explains yesterday. I also want to just add that, I agree, we're all here because we care about pace of play, and it's amazing that it's all the same people that show up to all the other meetings that care about what happens on our golf course. My thought is we have a new pro who's willing to try new things because he's new here and he's willing to listen to new people and new ideas. We also have the option to have, 1 year, we try it for $20,000 and we get ourselves a starter who's got a red, a yellow, and a green flag. I mean, that's not much investment. If it doesn't work after a year, we're not out that much money. But heaven knows if we find out in 1 year, this really helps. We don't have much time left, people. We're old. So I'm just teasing, Joe. I know you're sitting right here across me. But I mean, do you really want to spend? I would get that everybody says, what's the difference? I'm retired and I got nothing else to do. But you really do have other stuff to do. There's happy hour, there's pool, there's pickleball, there's tennis. Come on, you don't need to spend 5 hours on a golf course. So, it just could at least try it.
Jim?
Don, Steve, applaud you for all your efforts, the research you did into it, and the approach that you take. But I also have a copy of probably what you guys started with, the Royal and Ancient Basic Play Manuals, and it was like 80, 90 pages of everything that you need to solve pace of play is in here. But my observation is that they break it down into 3 issues: players, the golf course, and management. Most of your recommendations have focused on the players. It's like Steve appropriately, it's not me, it's all of the other SOPs that are out there on the course. So it's good that you started with that, but when it comes to the course, you guys took a hands-off approach, and the thought I have is one of the things they mentioned is the wave up approach. Now on hole 3, which is the first bottleneck we get, the golf committee some point in time ago said it's okay to drive on there and did the red and white stakes similar to all of the other holes on the course, because it almost plays as a extremely short par 4 for most of the players here. Now, par 3s, similar to that in most clubs, is where they will wave up. And I don't think we've ever tried it here, but like if you challenge the golf committee to say, how could we investigate, would that work here? That might eliminate some of the bottleneck. And the approach taken on hole 3, are 3 other par 3s
I don't know why they're sacred ground, that we could have a short distance on all of them, if, where people could drive in their cars, drop somebody off, on the other side of the hole, get back to the car path, using your regular white, boundary markers. Because Steve pointed out, so, like seconds matter, and so you maybe get people moving just by those seconds of somebody walking from the side of it, from the side of 15, 17. Perhaps it would make a difference, perhaps not, but this manual says, it's like 1/3, 1/3. With the course, what can you do with the challenge on your course? And what you are just thinking, let's start with players, and we can always get back to the course and then management, which I think. And
Yeah,
and the RNA definition is, they're left to discipline. Like people said, all right, if we get into this thing, how are we going to take care of the bad apples? Then, RNA says management has to buy into it and have consequences. But again, I
Right.
told you right, Sean.
Well, when we initially started, we had a brainstorming session, and we had management, we had players, and we had course. We had them all, and we elected to start with the players, try to educate the players first. Hopefully, the renovation is going to be improved, help improve pace of play. And we had some input and suggesting some ideas for the renovation committee also. But we looked at all those, and then the management looking at maybe doing the Marshall thing, bringing the Marshall thing back. Even though we have GPS, hasn't worked, but it's pretty good at giving some distance. But we need someone out there that's visual, that helps move the people along, because we know the GPS doesn't do any good. Right?
I know you mentioned every second counts. Is there any way that we can speed the carts up a little bit, especially between hole 9 to about 1, 2? Because I take my cart, I'm at a snack bar, order a sandwich, order a beer, get my thing, go to the bathroom, and then you guys show up. So I'm just thinking, I know it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
But
Well, we drive cars that have unlimited speed.
don't we have the ability to slow carts down, like when you get to the clubhouse
Yep.
area? So we can speed them up.
They
and then
slow down
them
near
Yeah,
the
That's just a thought.
concession area.
You're looking at pickup trucks.
Yeah. Chad, you looking at that?
Making them go fast.
A little faster, and then we can restrict them as they come into the bag area. Yeah.
Cars might just be set at.
Okay.
But there's actually a different cap, battery life and all that. Course, we're set up 12 to 13 miles an hour. And the GPS has the ability to slow it down. That's as fast as that car would go down. We upgrade the system. Okay. To the car itself.
Don, what did you say? We didn't hear a word.
Oh, we can't hear them.
Yeah.
All right.
Bill has a good voice.
Okay, the cart is set at the factory between 12 and 13 miles an hour. If you want to speed a cart up, the ones that are private, there's a different tap in there, or it's a different motor. But that cart is maxed out at 12, 13 miles an hour. The system can slow it down, but it can't go any faster than what it's set up to do. So we'd need a different drive system or that alteration before we want them to go faster than 13 miles an hour.
It's the same part, the same motor, it's just set up.
There's back home, there are some leagues that they call catch up. Split up to catch up. So let's say you're on the 3rd hole. And 2 people have already cut it out or on the same car, there's nobody in front of them. They go and tee off and start to play waiting for the other 2. So they're kind of like, it's a movement of them. It's split up to catch up. And it works.
That's a Sabatini rule. He was in a slow play group, and they were gonna get penalized, and he finished and took off and went to the next tee, so.
Okay, so the people that took the time to attend today, all care. We all care, and honestly, we think you did a great job, I'm sure, and, I think that the points you make are all very good. But my next question would be, how, you only need to educate, how are we gonna educate and get to where? I mean,
Again, this presentation is gonna have to be looked at by every member, the day, because they're not gonna get a tea time. They won't get a tea time until they sign an agreement that they're on the same page. Because we have players, or they come down from the north, and then they bring guests. Guests don't know the rules, they don't know the rules, and they're parking the carts in front of numbers 15, in front of the green. You want something slow, try to drive out, you can't, you gotta back out. Those are the people that need to agree on all the rules to follow, otherwise they're not gonna get a tea time. We have to all agree to make this thing work. That's why we're trying to educate the community, get them involved to make the system work. Because if only half of us understand the rules, we have another half that's gonna be slow play.
Where do we get the site? Is that on internet?
Yep, you can sign on, you can look at the video and an agreement of what has been agreed upon.
Give it every month.
And then sign it.
This has to be approved by the
This is-
national.
yeah.
This has a way to go, process and flow of documentation and everything.
Yep, this has all, our recommendation, when we get back from the town hall meeting, we'll look at what additional things that we need to be adding to our recommendation to the golf committee. And then the golf committee has to approve it, and it has to go to the master board.
So we will be members, we will continue to pay our dues. We can be a member, a golf member that has no points or 1 point, and if we don't sign that, we won't get a tea time.
If that's the rule, that's gonna be the rule. We can't have one individual ruin it for 200 other players that day. You know, we have rules right now, if you abuse, say you abuse the starter, or you abuse the marshal that's out there, you know? You're probably gonna be asked to leave the course.
There's probably an awful lot of people that, well, where's the paper, just let me sign it, and then, just like the GPS.
Well, and then when they make a mistake out there, that they're parking in front of 15, they're not, the carts in the front of the green instead of the back of the green on 3, you know, they're gonna be asked, let's pick it up and not do that anymore, otherwise you're gonna be asked to leave the course. Yeah.
I can bet you, first time somebody is asked to leave the course, everybody around here is gonna know about it. Then people will start taking seriously. Gotta
I'm-
get that person.
And I'm sure it's only gonna be a few people. It's gonna be a few people, because we want this to work.
You mentioned earlier that people should move up in tees, that was these things up black. I've got a suggestion, the number 1 fairways are 200 yards out, I think that was from the 3 tees, there's about 200 yards for both fairways on both sides. And I think that was the number you said was, the number, if you're gonna hit from the 3, it would hit at least 200 yards.
That's the USGA recommendation.
We could put a sign on the tee that says, if you can't reach the green, the tee, the fairway bunkers on either side, you're on the wrong tee. That might get the message out that a lot of guys that move up, kind of post them to.
Further that, maybe when we do scorecards, we could make a suggestion. If you're handicap is such and such, these are the Gs you should.
Well,
It's only a suggestion, but a lot of clubs have that on their town.
Sometimes a lot of the starters make sure if you're playing the right teams. You know, they can say, if you can't hit it 200 yards, you should be playing the 3-4 teams or the 4 teams, you know? A lot of good things are coming out of the group, but I'm sure we're all in agreement that we need to have the pace of play improve. You know, we can't have a few ruin it for the majority of us. Let's see.
With what Jim said about waving up, I played course in Illinois. On the third hole, R3, you have to wave up. And there's even a sign up by the green that says wave the, behind, it really was good, that wave up on the par 3. No.
I think we tried that once, Mark. Our Tuesday groups, we've tried waving up. You know, what's helped is, like Jim said, we're driving our carts on the fairway now. That's helping speeding up on number 3. But, you know, I bet you 10% of the club hits that green. So, you know, I'm saying maybe when they redesign this thing, let's move the 3 tee box, maybe where the 4 tee box is. And the 4 tee box, maybe just before the 4-5 with the ladies, another tee box right there, you know? Because it's a difficult hole, and I'm thinking that we 10% hit the green. But that, you know, that's something the renovation committee have been working on and asking for suggestions. Yeah, that came up in the renovation committee. So some good things happening, but any other ideas or problems that you've seen out there that we can look at? Okay, we'll take this all in and our group will get back together. I thank you all again for coming. We're going to try to have all the orientation build this in.